Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending today's webinar, How to Achieve Maximum ROI for Your State Imagery Program and Meet the Needs of All Stakeholders. My name is Amy, and I'm the Operation Managers here at National State Geographic Information Council. If you're unfamiliar with our organization, NSGIC exists to advance effective national coordination of geospatial information by supporting state-level cooperation. We serve as a national forum for the development of capable and future-oriented geospatial leadership. If you'd like to learn more information on how to get involved with us, please visit our website, www.nishik.org. Some reminders for our call today. All attendees have been muted on entrance, and there will be time at the end of the presentation for Q&A, so please place your questions into the chat box and they will be read aloud. Additionally, a recorded version of this webinar will be made available, so please be on the lookout for an email with that. And with that, I will now turn it over to the presenters. Tom?
Thank you, Amy, and welcome everyone. I will introduce our speakers today and the agenda for the webinar, How to Achieve Maximum ROI for Your State Imagery Program and Meet All the Needs of Stakeholders. I know that sounds ambitious, and we have developed a program and a new approach that we're going to introduce today. In fact, you'll be among the first ones to hear about it. So get ready. Presenting the program are Sanborn's leaders and experts, John Koppel, CEO, Jason Caldwell, Vice President, and Kate Hickey, Chief Operations Officer. Each of them with more than 2 decades in the industry and a long history of working with the NSGIC community. Our agenda today has 4 parts. First, John will describe our experience and insights about state aerial imagery that led to the development of this new program. Second, Jason will introduce the program in detail. Third, Kate will touch on the strategy and support elements that allow you to think beyond the data and ensure the ROI of your imagery investments. And then fourth, we'll wrap up with discussion about how to get started. So without further ado, I give you John Koppel, CEO of Sanborn.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciate everybody being here. And thank you, Tom, for reminding everybody how old I am. I really appreciate that input too. Been around a long time in this industry, and you know, we've seen many changes, and things are moving quickly, probably faster today than I've seen it move in a very long time. Putting together the Sanborn FGO team gave us the capability to just cover literally everything on the waterfront, from strategic planning all the way through the analytics and incorporating all the newest technologies that are coming to the surface here, where you talk about AI, ML, or you talk about virtual reality and augmented reality. We're just seeing a ton of change, and at the base of all that change still is your base map and the need for authentic, accurate base maps. So moving to the next slide, we understand that full cycle that imagery has, whether that's oblique imagery, ortho imagery, drone imagery, aerial imagery, satellite imagery. Sanborn has capabilities across the spectrum when we're talking about imagery. And as we thought about all this, we started saying, what are we seeing in the marketplace? If you can go to the next slide. Because we're off doing custom imagery programs for states. We have relationships with Google, with Vexel, with Hexagon. We're selling off-the-shelf content from Vexel and Hexagon. We previously sold off-the-shelf content from Google. We're seeing the emergence of new technology like Google Earth Engine and cloud services and all the analytics. But still, we see that it gets back to having this base of current, accurate, authentic imagery to enable all these analytics and all this information to be produced. So we continued to question ourselves about how can we make it easier? How can we make it better for our customers to acquire what they need? Because there is a huge ROI that we can see in the marketplace for having current, accurate, and repetitive imagery, not just the one time image the state or image the city or the county, but how do you have ongoing image programs so that you can provide these information products and distribute these information products and really see the ROI on having access to current complete imagery. So we took what we thought would be the best of the two concepts, the custom one-time purchase, the RFP that we see come out in the marketplace, and it has very detailed specifications against the subscription programs that are out there, where you have a subscription to standard content that's really built to a generic specification. And we said, why can't we merge these two things together and make one and bridge that gap between those two offerings? And so I'm going to let Jason start talking about what that means, because we called it Imagery as a Solution. And we think it's kind of the beginning of a new capability that we can offer to customers as a solution to having an ongoing imagery program.
Yeah, thanks, John, for that introduction to the program. And thanks, everybody, for being on the call today. One thing that I wanted to highlight is, I've been in this business for 25 years now, and it wasn't actually until this year at the Esri UC that I saw Jack Dangerman stand up and actually reference aerial imagery as the #1 foundational data set for all your other derivative products. And so it's kind of exciting to kind of hear this type of scenario really being presented by the godfather of GIS. I think a lot of us kind of understood this for a long time, but we're really starting to understand, that imagery isn't just for a backdrop. It really supplies and provides the significant, data set and the capabilities to extract specific data sets for our customers. And so it's exciting to kind of talk about this program, because what we've seen on the custom imagery side, there's a lot of people that like custom imagery, but they're starting to realize that the costs associated with that and some of the other components that they're getting from the subscription services are, they want to see those two married, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to offer here in terms of the imagery as a solution. So when we look at the Venn diagram, there's what people are familiar with from a custom imagery program and the parameters that are associated with that. That includes a lot of control over the specifications, the time of flight, things of that nature, as well as the licensing and the restrictions that are associated with the subscription side of things. On top of that, we feel like there's a hosted web service component that most customers are interested at this point, so they're not having to do a significant amount of investment on the IT infrastructure side of things. And then there's a last component, which really has to do with the data management and administration of users, as well as backend analytics in terms of how that data is being used, and a capability to actually run some of your own AI analytics to do some feature extraction. So when we bring all three of those components together, that's what we're referencing here when we're talking about imagery as a solution. So going to the next slide, what we tried to set up here on this table is documenting kind of the best of both worlds, right? We understand what custom collect is, and we understand what we're getting from the commercial subscription. So Sanborn's imagery as a solution is trying to marry those two together into what we believe is the best offering in terms of ROI. When we look on the left-hand side here in terms of features, this isn't every feature, but it highlights, I think, some of the primary features that customers talk about. And obviously at the top of the list has to do with public domain licensing. So when you do custom collect, you typically own that data. When you have commercial subscription services, typically that's restricted. And on the Sanborn imagery as a solution side, the data would be licensed for public domain access, meaning that it can be distributed to whoever you need to distribute it to. As we go down the list, there's quite a few other aspects here I think that are significantly valuable. One of them has to do with flight, date, and time. Most of our customers are interested in having a leaf off flight, and what we're seeing on the commercial side of things, it's not always flown at the dates that are required for most of their user needs. And then time of day as well, like looking at it and making sure that we're not seeing long shadows and things of that nature. Choice of resolutions, having flexibility there, projections and delivery formats across the stakeholder user community, having control of that is very important. Authentic data, right? Understanding what the accuracy is. Is there an accuracy stamp that's been certified? We know there's many states out there that actually require special certifications for any type of mapping to be done. And so the idea here is to make sure that what is being provided as this imagery as a solution allows for states to buy those products, even when you have special certifications that we see in North Carolina and Florida and some other states. The data is hosted and it's delivered as a service to our customers. Administrative and management tools, back-end tools that allow you as the manager of these programs to really control access, to try to understand who's accessing the data, how much they're accessing, where they're accessing it, all the analytical information that really empowers you to have better understanding of the use cases, the ROIs, which also helps with long-term funding. Public domain derivatives, this gets back to the initial comment in terms of public domain licensing. The derivative products in many cases on the commercial subscription side are limited and they are not allowed to be put in the public domain. And so we felt like if you're going to extract data from this imagery, it needed to give you the capability and the possibility to be able to distribute that to who you want to distribute it to. The other thing we've always recognized as a long-term provider of these types of services to our state stakeholders is having a scalable solution that doesn't necessarily increase in cost, right? We understand you have fixed budgets, and so trying to create a solution that allows for all the access and review and use of the data without having to charge by user or charge by egress access, right? Or egress fees. So the idea is to try to keep those contracts as flat as possible. Support and maintenance of the platform. Typically on a custom collect, you're not getting any type of platform. On the commercial subscription side, you do get support and maintenance on that platform. And obviously on the imagery as a solution, because it's a hosted solution, Sanborn would provide that as well. Self-serve analytical tools. We'll get into this a little bit later in the presentation. And this is an optional component, but we have a direct integration into Google Earth Engine or GEE that allows for you to have all kinds of backwards looking data sets that you can combine with the new data set that Sanborn provides and do all kinds of different change detection, land cover, analytical feature extraction, all kinds of different things that become very, very interesting in terms of being able to do that directly from the platform. Cost is always a big one, right? So thinking about, custom collect typically has a high cost ratio. Initial cost is high, but when you spread that cost over the course of many years, it can be a little bit lower. On the commercial subscription side, typically that's where we're seeing the best ROI, is that the cost is lower there. So Sanborn Imagery as a solution kind of fits in between those two, where we're really trying to focus on the invoicing model and help the states spread their cost over multiple budget cycles so that they have a fixed cost, so it becomes more operational cost associated with how they're managing their budgets. And then the last piece here has to do with support of bringing your own data strategies, right? The concept associated with custom collect is you get the data delivered. The concept associated with commercial subscription is that you're only working in one ecosystem. With Sanborn's solution, not only are we providing you our data, but we have an agnostic viewpoint in terms of other data sets that can be provided. So if you have your own data, that's either commercial based or your data that you own yourself, that can be all brought into the platform, so you have a single access point for all that data set. The next several slides, we're going to talk about how this all kind of works together and benefits the user community. So when we talk about project plan, this really gets into specifics about the specifications and how you have control over that, right? Leaf on versus leaf off becomes a huge one. Most of the clients these days are getting access to NAPE imagery and or they're getting commercial data sets that are leaf on. And so having the ability to control and contract for this type of program for leaf off is definitely something that Sanborn can offer. Even if you don't have a leaf off preference, but you have a preference in terms of time of year it's flown, that's all able to be handled within this program. Same thing with sun angle, same thing with resolution. We can map resolutions up to 1-inch resolution. It can be anything that you're looking for there. We can also look at options where you look at possibly a lower resolution statewide, and then you go into your urban areas and have higher resolution. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you would specify the project. Projections are a big one, right? Sanborn's typical delivery would be the hosted web services, but we always recommend an on-prem delivery for archival, and that on-prem delivery can be delivered in whatever projection that you prefer in terms of standard projections that are available in the industry. So with this delivery, we also provide a back-end analytical tool called Giza. This enables a pro rata cost distribution model. This has been incredibly valuable for the state of Texas in terms of how they understand who's using the data and really providing access to their end users in such a way that allows them to recover cost and also to understand how to have a long-term statewide project from a budgetary standpoint. Going to the next slide. Accuracy is a big thing, right? I mean, Sanborn is always focused on this in terms of our data sets that we deliver to our clients. So when we think about accuracy, what we wanted to mention in terms of this slide is that, you know, we're not cutting corners in terms of this data set, right? We are still collecting ground control. We're using full AGPS technologies, and we're actually providing accuracy statements that have a stamp that's provided either by a PLS or a CP certification. This is very important in very specific states like North Carolina, where it's actually required to legally be able to provide mapping services. But we feel this is valuable for any stakeholder. So you understand what the value is and what the accuracy is of the product that you're using. And that's an aspect that we provide that really provides you an authentic data set that can be used in many different ways. Authentication goes, I think, into multiple parts. As we go to the next slide, we'll kind of talk about some additional data sets that are provided that provide this type of value. When we talk about authoritative data, one thing that we always want to think about is, how do I know when this data was collected? This is an important timestamp that most of our customers are interested in. They want to know the exact time and date. And it's not necessarily like, oh, we flew over the course of this, 2-month period or 1-month period. What they're really interested in understanding is the exact day and the exact time. And what we provide you is metadata and a shape file or a geodatabase file that provides attribution for individual pixels associated with the date and time that imagery was collected. This becomes very valuable in court cases and other aspects of compliance. On the image on the right, what you see here is multiple different colors that represent a single image that was captured. And then you have the red checker box, which essentially is individual tiles. And so for the people that aren't familiar with this, the idea here is that we're making up a composite tile of multiple different images. And so it's very important to be able to provide feedback to our customers in association with, okay, that tile in general was collected on these days, but if you needed to go into that individual pixel and find that information, you'll be able to have that with this service. But continuing on, there's also technical aspects in terms of the quality of data that we provide. Color balancing always ends up being this big subjective aspect that we deal with. I know I had a customer early on in St. George, Utah, where they wanted it to be very, very red saturation. We gave them multiple iterations of this, and they finally sent us a red rock in the mail and said, color balance to this. And really, this is just an illustration of really what Sanborn's trying to achieve, which is to deliver the product to meet your exact needs. And so we allow you to provide input, and the expectation is the output that we deliver to you matches the color that you're looking for in terms of the actual product quality. So this is definitely a difference from what we consider the commercial off-the-shelf products, and the fact that you do have some control over some of the aesthetic qualities associated with the product itself. We'll keep talking about data quality as we move on. Data quality in terms of bridges. So just like you would expect in most of your custom collects, all the bridges would be rectified. There's other data quality points that we're not showing in this presentation, but that would include building lean in your downtown urban areas and things of that nature. So again, the idea here isn't trying to cut corners to lower costs. The idea is to deliver you the quality of product that you typically would see from a custom collect, but that you would actually be able to spread over the course of a term and get kind of the benefits that you typically would see from that subscription model without the limitations. The other aspect that I'll mention is that a lot of times when you're using the data sets from off-the-shelf data and or custom collects, it takes a while to be able to get access to that data. And so one thing that Sanborn provides through this program is an early access to the data. So 14 days from when it's captured, you would have access to an early delivery through a web map and a web service. And this is something that we believe is significant value from an ROI perspective, because the sooner we can get the data into your hands, the sooner that ROI starts being calculated. We also understand that as soon as this image is captured, things are changing, right? And so how do we, provide the data in such a nature that allows you to use it quicker? Because as that data changes, really the data is aging and is becoming less valuable. And so the idea is really to try to get you the data as fast as possible. So 14 days after collection is always the go in terms of that initial delivery data set. So again, just to remind you in terms of the quality, Sanborn is an ISO certified company. We're one of the few companies in this space that maintains this certification. So all the data sets that we would collect and process and deliver as this imagery as a solution would fall under this certification and be delivered in such a way which offers continuous improvement, as well as meeting technical details and specifications. I won't go through every single one of these steps that we go through in terms of our quality assessment and process, but it's important to recognize that we do provide that value. As we move on, we want to talk about what else you can do with this data. Derivative products are always a big discussion. And again, one of the biggest points I'll make here is that the derivative products in this case, they're not limited in terms of providing that data into the public domain. And so that is an aspect that is very powerful in terms of return on ROI for these types of data sets. The first one we'll talk about is elevation models. So many people are very familiar with LiDAR because of 3DEP, which has been an amazing program that Sanborn's been part of. But one thing I'll also mention is that through the photogrammetric process, we can also derive elevation data products, whether those are DEMS, DSMs, DTMs, break lines, anything having to do with the elevation products can be derived from the photogrammetric program. And what we believe is the value equation here in terms of the leaf off product. This type of data set can be as accurate as LiDAR depending on when you collect it and the resolution that you collect at. So it becomes a very powerful tool to be used in combination with your other data sets for looking at changes of elevation and things of that nature. Other derivative products include vector extraction. I think a lot of people are familiar with planimetric type of data sets. So being able to extract different features such as building footprints or road networks or vegetation types. Hydrography is a big one that people are talking about these days, and even utility infrastructure and contours. So the photogrammetric approach that we provide in terms of these data sets has the ability to extract out both 2D and 3D line work based upon what the client's needs are. Also, we deliver this data to you as a public domain accessible data set, so you can do your own extraction or hire others to do the extraction. Raster products. So a lot of people are familiar with NDVI and other type of change detection maps that are raster focused, whether it's impervious surface or land cover, land use types of maps. There's a lot of capabilities within this product. The one thing that wasn't really mentioned, but I want to make sure is very clear, which is very valuable for this type of extraction, which is typically used in AI, is that this is a 4-band data set. It would always be delivered as an RGB and near infrared. There's no additional cost for that 4th band and really enables the type of AI and ML type of modeling that you typically would see within these raster extraction products. So once we have these derivative products and we have all this imagery, that's all great. But one of the things that we've seen as a gap, and we've continuing to have states come on board with the GIZA app, is looking at ways of hosting the data so that you get the best performance across all devices. It also allows for democratization of the data. It allows for easy access and an easy way to search and find the data set. The backend analytics of this tool is very powerful in terms of providing a heat map in terms of where the data is being downloaded. This can provide a lot of focus in terms of where you might want to do updates. It also can provide some focus in terms of how the storage is handled on the back end. In general, the other items that we look at in terms of the advanced analytics engine is who's using the data and how it's being used in terms of use cases. This provides information back to you as the owner of this type of product for your stakeholders, enough information to really start providing decision-making processes as you move forward. So the GIZA app is a great app. It's currently being used both on the commercial off-the-shelf product side, but also would be used in this type of platform where the Sanborn as a service or Sanborn as a solution would be provided. The other thing I'll mention is that we do have integration with the Google Earth Engine, and this product is a pretty amazing product. It provides a platform that is integrated directly with the cloud-hosted platform that we would provide. It allows for you to interact with your data on this platform, as well as interacting with the data catalog that's already on the Google Earth Engine platform. Why this is powerful is because it's using Google Compute and Cloud to essentially provide a computational platform to do all kinds of different analysis. So if you have a statewide requirement to do an analysis on irrigated lands, for example, or an impervious surface, or anything beyond that, the tool is a great platform to be able to run those types of extractions. The other thing that's really cool about the Google Earth Engine is that there's a fairly large collaborative ecosystem with essentially existing ML AI models that are accessible and a community that can provide backup information associated with how to do certain types of processing. On the next slide, we talk about it a little bit more, but the concept really here is the idea of being able to use the data the way that you want to. The focus here on this slide is really talking about the ability to not only use Sanborn's imagery within this cloud environment, but also to bring your own data sets, right? And I think this is a pretty powerful messaging. You have a lot of data that is there to be able to essentially bring it onto a single platform that allows you to find it, to run analytics on the back end in terms of who's using it and how it's being used, and to also bring that into a Google Earth Engine platform that allows you to run ML and AI on it in an automated fashion really provides the value proposition. And a little bit more on the analytical platform associated with the Google Earth Engine. The idea here is that you collect data, you bring that into a compute and analyze function, and then it also allows you to visualize and report. And so this type of platform, if you choose to go this direction, also provides you essentially a dashboard of information that can be updated on an ongoing basis as additional inputs are provided, as additional imagery is provided by Sanborn, as well as data that's already within the platform itself. So it's not only a pitch for Google Earth Engine, but really the concept in terms of how you can really get more ROI out of the pixels that you're buying now. With that said, I think we're going to hand it off to Kate to talk a little bit more about thinking beyond the data. So Kate, go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Jason. So as Jason's been describing, the imagery as a solution offering is really more than the data piece of it. It's really a suite of services and support options that increase the value of your imagery investment. So, we've thought a lot about this program and, considered what we've heard from states, thinking about what they might need beyond these data products. And a lot of this honestly stems, what I've added to the conversation here is AppGeo's long history of doing strategic planning across the country. And so, working with state GIOs to understand their needs across the board, both, the needs of the constituents that they're serving and the needs of the GIO and those who are managing the imagery programs at the state level. So as we come in and have been doing strategic plans, we're hearing about, what are those pain points, not just about the data, but about all those things that surround the imagery programs. So, one key thing we've heard is that it can be very hard to capture and to document the hundreds of ways that the data is used every day. So this is just that upper graph there on the left is just a very generalized view of digging into who are all these, what are all these different use cases, who are all these different users in local government and other agencies and tribal governments, across the board, all those who are using the data. And then, how do you analyze the requirements that are going to support most of your users? I think this gets at what Jason was talking about in some of the commercial subscription programs. Perhaps you're able to provide that data very easily at very low cost, but that it might not be meeting the needs of all your users. And so really capturing what those needs are and tying those back to what the use cases are. And this ties closely with then quantifying the value of your imagery program, which is exactly what's needed when you're trying to get commitment from the legislature or others who are going to pay or obligate funds to keep your program running. So that quantification piece has been something that we've really focused on. We've also heard from many of you that the administrative cost of managing a program is often grossly underestimated. I think in states, especially who might have very few people in the GIO office, understanding, what does it take to coordinate with locals and other agencies? What does it take to store and distribute the imagery? How do you cover the cost? How do you perhaps share the cost and account for those agencies that might be using the imagery a lot more than others? How do you provide the technical support? All of those are really big burdens on a GIO and a GIO office, and understanding what that takes is key to running a successful program. So, we see all these data adjacent elements as really essential components of a successful program, and we think they should be built into the cost. And that cost should be acknowledged. So, in this program, what we would offer as a potential would be program strategy and justification, or ROI analysis. I know you've heard ROI a lot today, but really doing that analysis and understanding how it's specific and relevant in your state. Understanding what your stakeholders need now and what their evolving needs are going to be. What are the tools for administering and managing the program? What's the technical support or guidance on storage, distribution, security, all of those aspects? And then what kind of support might you need for effective use of the data? Analytical solutions, visualization. Jason was talking a lot about the self-service tools, but it could also be packaged in that you get access to data scientists who can help build scripts or tools or visualizations to support your program. So, what we're really hoping is that by offering this, we can support you in a more holistic vision of an imagery solution that encompasses all of the data products and all of the quality that Jason has been describing, and a full range of the program services that surround that data. So you don't just get access to that data, but you get access to program managers, you get access to strategic planners and application developers and data scientists. And these can all be baked in or rolled up or bundled into a program that has a steady, predictable cost. So I think in the interest of time and to make sure we have time for questions, I'm gonna go up. Move on and start talking. I guess, Jason, if you want to just give a summary here of how we see this all fitting together, and then we can talk about some next steps.
Yeah, that's great, Kate. Thank you so much. So I had a picture here where the cake was smashed over someone's face, right? But I think this is a little bit better. But the idea here is like you can have your cake and eat it too, right? So the concept of being able to have, a custom collect capability in terms of being able to try to dictate in terms of the schedule of flights, the technical aspects of the flights, but also getting access to hosted web services, back-end analytics, and having a cost model that is actually spread across multiple years. So it's a fixed cost that's part of the operational cost, is all really what the thought process and strategy is here. And so, whether you want to call it have your cake and eat it too, or you want to call it the best of both worlds, whatever it is, the thought here is really the pieces that you like from those subscription models without the pieces that you don't like from those subscription models, with the pieces that you like from the custom side of things. So at the end of the day, you can see here, most of these are green. Obviously, we do acknowledge that there's going to be a little bit of increased cost when you compare it to an off-the-shelf only type of product. But when you really compare it to the ROI that you get out of a solution like this, it's very powerful. And just the public domain alone, which is the biggest one that we typically hear from our customers, is a huge aspect to this. But all the other administrative tools, the project management backend, the strategy that Kate was just talking about, all become part of the program that is of interest to our customers. So at the end of the day, I like the idea of having my cake and eating it too. So how do we get started? I mean, and we will be at NSGIC, and we'd be happy to talk with you. There'll be, I think, 5 of us at NSGIC, including most of the participants on this call, myself, John, and Kate. Beyond that, we're happy to have a discussion at any time. If you want to reach out, you can schedule a call with me at any point in time. Be happy to bring on others from this call as well as others from the technical team if we need to do that. But we'd be happy to talk about it further, give you budgetary estimates, things of that nature, if that's what you need. All right. So I think looks like Carl has a question there, but is someone else gonna?
Sure, I can read the questions. And so question that came in addressed to you, Jason. How would you collect data for this service? And related to that, right behind it, how often would you collect?
Right. So the concept with this approach is that you have the ability to control, the aspects associated with how often it would be collected. And so if you want it once a year, if you want it twice a year, if you want it 4 times a year, if you want it once every 2 years, that's really up to you as the stakeholder to decide. And the way that this data would be collected would be with primarily Sanborn assets. We're up to 14 aircraft now, and many different digital sensors that can be deployed for this program. So similar to a custom collect on the acquisition side of things, you would have control over when, where, how often, and the primary resource would be Sanborn assets.
Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
So we have a lot of time for questions, and while you're thinking of them, put them in the chat, and we'll get right to them. As we give you a little space for that, I would like to just throw a couple of questions over the wall. I'm wondering, you talked a lot about the public domain, Jason, and could you confirm or explore how that also fits with archiving and using historical imagery that's collected through the program for change detection, things like that? I'm assuming that's all included, but can you confirm that?
Yeah, anything that Sanborn would collect through this program would be licensed for public domain, right? Meaning that there wouldn't be any restrictions on you in terms of how you distribute the data. So from the first data set, regardless if that goes into archive on-prem, if you're still using it in a hosted solution, and in every case, it would be licensed for public domain.
Great. We have another question from Dennis Peterson. You listed the cost for the imagery as a solution as medium. Can you elaborate on that? Is that for an average sized state, 6 figures, 7 figures, etc.?
Yeah, so Dennis, I'm not going to be able to specifically give you pricing over this call. Obviously, we would be happy to do that as we can provide, have discussions with you and provide more detail. But the concept here is that these would be longer term contracts with multiple flights for the full state. One thing I didn't really, I guess, talk about and leverage here, but one thing I want to make sure is truly understood here is that typically what we'd be looking for is flying the entire state in a single season. And with doing that, we gain efficiencies, obviously, because it's a fairly large area. And with the knowledge that there's multiple flights under that single contract, it allows us to be much more efficient than what we typically would see on a single one-off custom collect. It would be hard to be as low of a cost as what we see on the commercial off-the-shelf side. We still offer those commercial off-the-shelf products. So, from that perspective, those products are still available. But again, what we're trying to present here is something that provides a much higher level of ROI than what we typically are seeing on the commercial off-the-shelf side of things. So hopefully that answers the question. I mean, the idea here is it's not going to be the cheapest, but it's definitely not going to be the most expensive. And there's some efficiency that is gained through a program like this because you have multiple known flights within the program that are all being flown within single flight seasons. So, and Dennis, we'd be happy to follow up with further discussions on specific pricing.
So the next question from Clarence Young from Maine. Do you have any costing metrics to share that we might be able to use to do a cost benefit comparison for our current programs? Maybe that's more directed in your direction, Kate.
Well, I think the costing metrics, I think I would defer to Jason on that. I mean, do we have the costing metrics right now for the program?
Yeah, I mean, we can easily develop that for you, Clarence. I mean, that's something that we do have in terms of what a custom cost would be versus what an off-the-shelf cost would be versus what this new program would be, right? So we can kind of look at those comparisons. I think what would be valuable, Kate, to add to that would be the ROI possibilities from that, so they can kind of get a feel for not just the fee, but what we feel the ROI potential is from that product. Obviously, the public domain access is a huge one in terms of being able to get more ROI out of the product.
Right.
So I think that's a great point, Clarence, and we don't have it in this presentation, but we'd be happy to follow up with that information based upon our historical knowledge. And obviously, Kate has done a ton of work on the strategy and needs assessment on the ROI side of things. So bringing those two together would be perfect.
Right.
Yeah, I think to answer the question a little more succinctly, what we were doing here is presenting the concept, the variables of how often data is collected, what resolution data is at, how accurate the data needs to be to meet your requirements, then drives the cost. And then we have a method over time on which you subscribe to it, which tends to spread out that, normally upfront large cost into smaller buckets. And while at the same time, there could be areas that you want to update versus other areas that you would have scheduled for longer term. We provided a list of potential analytical and distribution return investments that you could look at to get specific for each state on what the return on investment is. That's where Kate's team has done an amazing job of providing those return on investments, and we're happy to engage with you to give a specific use case and return on investment for your state.
Yeah.
There is no one model fits all return on investment. It depends on how your state uses this data and what analytics are done with it, how it's distributed. We're seeing, very different use cases across many, many different customers. And so just to be able to say there's an ROI of this is not possible. We have to look at what your requirements are, how you use the data, who uses it downstream from you, and how critical those applications are. If you get into some very critical applications, return on investment for the data is almost immeasurable because it's a critical resource in order to allow a certain process to continue. So we're not trying to evade the questions here. We're trying to give you the concepts, and we're happy to follow up with all of you individually to run these to ground so that you can have a specific cost and return on investment for your state.
Mm-hmm. And just to respond to Kim's question along those lines as well. I mean, in terms of, I guess what we've seen, for example, we just finished a project in the state of Washington, and I'll be talking with Joanne Markert at NSGIC about that project. But there it really was figuring out, to maximize ROI, it means optimizing the product that is being delivered to your stakeholders. And so what we envision with this program is really identifying what is that optimal product, what is it that your stakeholders need, and then how does that get delivered in a way that is most cost effective. And then what when you if we were to work with you, identify what that is, and then you could look at ROIs, look at comparative ROIs in other states, and begin to get a sense of, when you deliver the right product, what is that return? There's no way to capture and quantify all benefits. Years ago, we worked in the state of Maine in trying to capture this, and I think Clarence would attest to the fact that it is challenging to capture all of those benefits and to quantify all of those benefits. But by looking at examples in other states and making sure that what is being delivered to you fits your needs, that is how you maximize that value.
And we are resellers and support the Vexel content and the Hexagon content programs, and we're not in any way being negative towards those programs. We support those data sets and we sell them. We're aware of the Hexagon Content Plus. There's a little difference in our program, we believe, in that the licensing model is a little different. We don't restrict distribution at all. We encourage it. In fact, we're wanting to provide assets in order to make that a more functional part of the delivery, with things like GISA and other applications to enable people to use the data. So, the Hexagon Content Plus program has some characteristics that are similar to Sanborn's program. I think one of the differences is that, we're going to deliver an AT report. We're going to ensure that it meets ASPRS standards, and we're a little bit more flexible on the distribution to the population, in that we're not restricting distribution in any way or derivative products.
And I think just one piece to add, I think, to both of those comments for Kim and Dennis, which has to do with the back-end analytic capability. In both of those discussions, when you think about ROI, it is one thing to deliver the pixel, but it's another thing to be able to actually provide this analytical back-end information in terms of who's using it and how it's being used, as well as being able to provide a platform to do some of your own AI ML type of feature extraction, which is somewhat unique to what Sanborn's providing here. So.
It looks like, again, we have a little more time. So if you want to type a question in that's you're thinking about, and don't be shy. This is a great opportunity with John, Jason, and Kate in the room. The depth of their experience is hard to match. I would again just throw another quick question over the wall to you all. In terms of getting started or transitioning to this approach, it sort of builds on the ROI question. What kind of information, or would you recommend a sort of an audit or a strategic plan or something along those lines that maybe Kim was thinking about to lay the groundwork for moving in this direction? What do you think about the transition process? How do we accelerate that process and get these advantages in place?
So I think, there are a couple of ways you can approach it. I think it's understanding who it is that you're trying to present to, who it is, who's your audience, and either approaching things by looking at comparative studies, or by doing, you can do ROI you could have a whole chart for ROI too, and you could spend months trying to calculate and quantify value, to a very specific and detailed degree in your state. So I think we're working on one with the state of Indiana right now, trying to measure the ROI of the state GIO office, just trying to understand what is the value across the board that office is bringing, and how are agencies and local governments saving money, or how are they improving their processes, or how are they benefiting from the work that office is doing. So I think, in terms of how to approach this, it's what are you trying to accomplish? Is it specifically about an imagery program? Is it measuring value across the board for all of the things that you are doing and delivering and providing to your constituents? And you can do generalized studies. I think, as part of this, I guess that is what we were trying to convey, is that as part of a program like this, you can build in the ongoing strategy. So it might be that you kick off a program like this with beginning to quantify that, beginning to articulate the needs, and then throughout the program you have access to those who can guide and help strategize, and you can build and document throughout the program. So it becomes, so it's not just a data program, it's a data plus strategy plus analytics plus whatever you need, all at this stabilized price.
Thanks, Kate. So without further questions, I'll just note to the two comments here, questions about sharing the slide deck, and we are recording this presentation with the slides, and that will be available to you that are attending and signed up in the NSGIC community. We also just want to remind you that at the NSGIC annual conference, we're making ourselves available to take those deep dives into the program that you might want to have, where you can explore the specific questions that you might have with regard to your current situation. As Kate and Jason and John have said, no two states are alike. We really appreciate that. That's part of the motivation for this program development. Any last words from folks that presented today? I think we can wrap up unless there's another question. But Jason, Kate, and John?
Not for me. We just look forward to seeing everybody in Louisiana here in a week or two. So.
Yes.
Are you going to bring some red velvet cake, Jason? Looks like a really good picture.
That's all I'm going to do is eat that cake while I'm in NSGIC, that's for sure.
So the best next step, shoot Jason an email with regard to getting a meeting set up at NSGIC, or before or after, anything that works. As Dennis said, apples and oranges, there's lots of possibilities here. This is a new entrant into the evolving marketplace for imagery. And we firmly believe it's a very powerful and flexible way to think about getting this important data into your hands. So look forward to being with you at NSGIC.
Now, on the NSGIC side, I just want to say thank you to all of you today, the Sanborn team, for an incredible presentation, and thank you to the audience for tuning in. And we hope to see all of you in New Orleans. It's going to be great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.